Hello everyone. For this lecture, we're going to be talking specifically about the functions of the respiratory epithelia. The respiratory epithelium will consist of a pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium with numerous mucus cells. The respiratory epithelium will line the entire respiratory tract except for the inferior portions of the pharynx, which it will divide with the digestive system, and therefore it will be composed of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and the alveoli, which will be made up of simple squamous epithelium, because where you need to have gas exchange, you can't have several layers like in the case of the stratified squamous epithelium. Therefore, it needs to be a single cell layer with very flat cells. That's why it's squamous epithelium. But we will talk more about the alveoli in the next module. In this histological image, we can see the cilia. That's why it's called ciliated. And we can see that it's pseudostratified columnar because it looks like there are several cell layers as the nuclei are displayed in several different locations or levels within the cell. But this is just because the cells are so squished together that when you section the tissue, it seems like there are several cell layers, but it's really one cell layer. Here we're going to cover the different types of cells. Therefore, besides the ciliated columnar epithelial cells, which we saw on the previous slide, and are these cells right over here, and they have hair or cilia. This is why they're called ciliated. And we have at least 6 other cells that are listed below. First, the basal progenitor cells, like the name says, are the ones that are capable of self-renewing and differentiating into virtually every pseudostratified epithelial cell type, whether under steady state or in normal condition or after acute injury. In addition, they will provide an attachment site for the other cells to the basal lamina. Next, we have what we call the club cells. They are also progenitor cells for both themselves and ciliated cells. In addition, they do regulate the contents of the fluid secretion in the distal segments of the respiratory tract. So they're located further down in the respiratory tract. Then we have what we call the tuft cells, which are chemosensory epithelial cells in the respiratory tract. It can be found in several other organs as well, which will include the gastrointestinal tract, the pancreas, and the lungs. And notice how they present with these cell extensions that are different from the cilia. And in this case, they are what we call microvilli that actually increase the surface area and help to increase absorption. And recently, there's an increasing number of studies that have revealed chemotactic abilities and immune function of the tuft cells, and numerous efforts have been devoted to uncovering the role of the tuft cells in tumors. Notably, accumulating evidence has shown that there are specific genes expressed in tuft cells that are involved in vital processes related with carcinogenesis and cancer development. However, the interaction between the tuft cells and cancer cells still remain to be further elucidated. Also, these several studies, they do suggest that there might be some hope of inspiring the future research in validating tuft cells as novel strategies for cancer therapies. Therefore, this sounds very promising and exciting. Moving on to the ionocytes, the researchers named these cells pulmonary ionocytes because they're similar to ionocytes, which is a type of cell found in the gills of freshwater fish and frog skin, which regulate the balance of salts. These cells are rare cell type with high expression of a transcription factor and cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator, or CFTR, which is a chloride channel that is going to be defective in patients that present with cystic fibrosis. We will talk more about cystic fibrosis in the next module. Next, the neuroendocrine cells are part of the neuroendocrine system. Makes sense, right? There are neuroendocrine cells in most organs of our body, including the lungs. As we have seen already, they make hormones which control how our body works. And these neuroendocrine cells of the lungs, they make hormones that will control the flow of air and blood in the lungs by causing either dilation or contraction of the bronchioles in the lungs. Lastly, we have the goblet cells, which are a type of mucus cell, and these cells, like the name says, will produce a sticky mucus that will bathe the exposed surfaces, as we can see on the apical part of the cells. In the nasal cavity, the cilia will sweep any microorganism or debris that's trapped in the mucus towards the pharynx, where it will be swallowed and then exposed to the acids and enzymes of the stomach as it moves down the esophagus and reaches the stomach. And in the lower portions of the respiratory tract, the cilia also beats towards the pharynx, and it creates what we call a mucus escalator that cleans the respiratory passageways. So it sort of beats up and removes the debris from the lower part of the respiratory tract, and they move it all the way up to the pharynx. And from the pharynx, we know where it goes. It either goes to the stomach, or if you want, you can also spit it out. But if you swallow it, once it reaches the stomach, it will be destroyed by the acids of the stomach. It is important to notice that this delicate surface of the respiratory system, it can be severely damaged if the inspired air, or in other words, the air that enters into our respiratory tract, becomes contaminated with either debris or pathogens. However, the air that's entering the respiratory system is filtered to remove these contaminants. And this respiratory filtration mechanisms forms what we call the respiratory defense system. In the nasal cavity, virtually all the particles that are larger than 10 microns, they're going to be removed from the inspired air. And larger particles are removed by the stiff hairs that are termed vibrissae that are found in the nasal cavity. So the little hairs that you see in your nasal cavity, those will hold the large particles, and this is what forms the boogers in your nose, right? So if you're working outside, maybe doing some yard work, at the end of the day, you will realize that you have way more boogers formed or large particles that get trapped in these hairs that are present in the nasal cavity than when you're sitting inside studying for your A&P exams or doing your A&P class activities. This image here to the left is an image that is actually a live imaging technique that captures the cilia beating and the transport of the debris across the surface of the epithelium. So make sure that you click on the image so that you can play and see the movement of the cilia and the debris moving within your respiratory tract. Now, this image was taken from an article that studied pulmonary ionocytes, and they do suggest that it appears that the ionocytes are going to play a role in this process of the mucus escalator, which is basically clearing up the mucus from the airways, making sure that they remove all the pathogens and debris and take it up all the way to the pharynx. So again, make sure to click on the image and see how cool it is for this movement to occur in a way that's removing all these tiny little particles.